You're listening to Cattails, the podcast of SLC Faculty Local 417, your union connection. Each episode, we bring you real stories from our members, practical tips on your rights, and the kind of information that helps us all move forward.
Welcome back to Cattails. I'm your host, Julie White. This episode brings together three conversations and captures exactly where we are right now as a sector, navigating change, building new tools, and supporting each other through a year that stretched every corner of our colleges. First, we look ahead to our annual general meeting with Local 417 President Christina Decarie and Vice President Tabatha Rutledge, a moment of reflection, transition, and renewal for our local. Then we shift into the future of union work with Steward John Holmes, the creator of the Virtual Steward, a tool that's already transforming how we support members and protect timelines. And finally, we check in with Local 418 President Amanda Shaw for an update on support staff, the merger, the ripples from last year's layoffs, and the proactive work happening right now to prepare for what comes next. Let's begin with Christina and her final president's report. This year's annual general meeting arrives at a moment of profound transition for Local 417. Layoffs, involuntary transfers, looming merger, and the quiet erosion of contract faculty have reshaped our college in ways that we're still trying to understand. And for President Christina Decarie, this AGM marks something deeply personal. Her final report after 22 years at the college and nearly a decade in union leadership. But she's not reflecting alone. Today, she's joined by Tabatha Rutledge, longtime steward, organizer, and one of the anchors of continuity in this turbulent year. Together, they've carried the local through some of the most difficult moments. I sat down with both of them to talk about legacy, exhaustion, succession, and what they want members to hear before we gather at the AGM. Christina, this is your final AGM, your final president's report. How are you approaching it emotionally, practically, and politically?
Well, I can tell you that I am so busy that honestly, it hadn't even occurred to me to think about it or to even think about, like, I haven't prepped my president's report. And so, of course, it is going to be significant because I'm going to have to reflect on the past 4 years. And the past year has just been so busy and so tumultuous, and the change continues. So, I mean, emotionally, I'm very sad because I'm leaving my job that I've been at for 22 years. But it's the right thing to do. And I watched a lot of people go through retirement, and I know that it's a process, but until you do it, you don't really know. And I do feel torn because there's still really important work that has to get done, and I will not be here to do that work. But I also think I'm really, really tired.
Okay. So when you're looking back at your term, what stands out? What are you the most proud of?
Well, so my time with the union executive started back in 2015, I think it was, and we had, record low engagement. So I'm really proud that I was part of the team that addressed that and changed the engagement, and that engagement has remained high, throughout the years because we've worked really hard at it. So I'm really, really proud of that, and I am proud of the work that the local did to help people during COVID. And ain't no secret, I don't think the college did very much for us at all. And the union did a lot. Everything from providing masks, for God's sake,
Yeah.
to working on morale, working on connectivity, um, just being there for people. I'm proud of that.
Nice. And what are you hoping that members are going to hear most clearly when you give that final report?
Oh my God, get involved. Get involved. Your executive is exhausted and we're volunteers. And what happens when we are exhausted and we're at the end of our tether? We leave and then we're not there anymore. That's what's happening to me. And the union is not your executive. The union is not OPSU Central. The union is not your steward. The members are the union, and the members need to do the work of the union. Your elected representatives are merely people who have more official access to information or processes or responsibilities, but we are not the union. You are the union, and we need you to step up and do the union work.
Awesome. And part of the reason you are exhausted, you have been filling the shoes of the lead steward as well since the start of the year. So we're going to see Gillian return next semester. So how does her return shape some of that continuity and stability for the local?
Thank God for Gillian's return. I have been doing the lead steward work, and I don't know how she does it. It is so much work. And there's the need to have so much knowledge that I just don't have her knowledge. So it's a lot to balance. And it's also a much more, like, always Gillian and I would joke that I'm good cop and she's bad cop. And so to put on the bad cop hat while also wearing the good cop hat is very difficult to do. I'm so looking forward for everybody for her return. And she and Tabatha has more history with union leadership than Gillian, but Gillian and Tabatha together are our stability and continuity. They're the ones with the institutional memory and experience. So I'm thrilled to have her.
Dynamic duo. All right. The AGM's happening in the shadow of layoffs in the involuntary transfers. Are you going to be addressing that in your report?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And I'll also be addressing the fact of all of the contract faculty that we've lost quietly, silently over the past year. I don't want them to be forgotten. And I will have to remind people that we're not done. We can expect layoffs for the next 2 years, probably twice per year for the next 2 years. And there's going to be a lot of change. And that does not even take into account any changes that we can expect as a result of the merger with Fleming. We don't even know how that's going to affect us yet. That work hasn't even started. So even without the merger, we can expect layoffs twice per year for the next 2 years. I'm sorry to say it, but people need to face reality. And it doesn't matter whether or not your program is suspended. It doesn't matter what your enrollment is. It doesn't matter what campus you teach on. Every single job is at risk.
Okay. And what do you want members to understand about what the union can and cannot control right now?
We actually can't control very much. And I think that there is a misconception that we can swoop in and change what management is doing or change management decisions. We can't. Management runs the college. We run the union. And our job at its core is to ensure that the collective agreement is followed. That is truly at its core what our job is. So the college can decide to lay people off. That is their prerogative. We can challenge those layoffs using the collective agreement, but sometimes it's just not there. Sometimes the challenge just isn't there. And of course, we work very hard to protect full-time jobs. That is the priority. But again, that comes from the collective agreement. That is a priority as dictated by the collective agreement. So, over the past year, a few times I've been asked, why isn't the union protecting partial load jobs or part-time jobs? Like, we do try, but it literally says in the collective agreement that our priority is full-time jobs, and we have to do what the collective agreement says. So I think it's important for people to understand that the union does not run the show. The college runs its own show, and we ensure that the collective agreement is followed.
All right, so let's go over to Tabatha for a minute. I've heard a lot of people talk about how this may be the busiest time in our local's history. And given your experience with the union tab, how's the LEC for Local 417 looking from a succession planning perspective?
I've been around for a really long time. I've been teaching at the college for 25 years, and I've never worked this amount of hours in my life. The local is extremely busy. A lot of provincial stuff going on. We're dealing with a lot of different campaigns, our layoffs, the merger, record number WMGs, and swift conversations and people asking questions that they need answers for. I'm just gonna say we're working really, really hard, but at the same time, things like the policy and procedure, we still have to do some of that nitty-gritty stuff in between. And I'm lucky we do have people on the committee that are really good at that type of thing, such as yourself, Julie. So and bringing new expertise like the podcast. Like, we're always trying to update and bring new things. I think succession planning is important to think about every year, not just when it's an election year, because we have to incorporate and build in mentoring for new stewards, which we've been very lucky over the past few years to have wonderful talents of new people added to our team. Where I think Local 417 shines is we look at an individual that says they're willing to help and tailor what their role is to where their strengths are and what they like to do and where their passion is. So it's not always trying to make someone do something that we need done. It's where would they fit best. So, and then it's not really like work because it's, something you really love doing. Um, the election, there's people that I know are putting their name forward for the positions, but everyone is welcome to put their name forward. And if they're not willing to say, "Hey, I'm ready to do this right now," if they're open to being a steward, there's a small offload for stewards, and you're not alone. You don't have to know anything about the role. We will mentor you. And then if someone wants to help but doesn't want an offload or doesn't want to commit, as a steward, we do need people out there as our outreach who can spread a message, talk to 5 people, to 6 people in their team, so that information is coming out about bargaining or restructuring or mergers or things like that. It's disseminated quickly. And so we call them organic leaders. And we have so many of them. So individuals want to step forward and be an organic leader. I know we already have some, but we're definitely looking in the future for more.
Excellent. It's like that old Fabergé organics. We'll
Yes.
tell 2 friends and so on and so on.
Okay, and it's like a big old phone tree where it's a one-on-one conversations, and then if individuals are willing to just, send an email saying, "Hey, these are some of the questions that were brought up." Then we can answer those in the podcast, in the newsletter, at the membership meetings. That building a relationship, one-on-one conversations is where we grow our local to be even stronger.
And one of the big changes that we're doing with the bylaw is obviously reflecting our new reality as a composite loco now that we have part-time and sessional folks joining the ranks. So do you want to talk a little bit about how there's new roles that are going to be identified within the bylaw as well?
So in our local, Gillian is our lead steward, unit steward. She's our person that's on our constitutional committee at provincial OPSU, and she just loves all the nitty gritty constitutional rules. But when we look at it, she's saying that a lot of the stuff in our bylaws is actually policy and procedure. So what we're trying to do is, separate it out, more clean lines, what is in our bylaws, and then have the separate policy and procedures. Because when we change policy and procedures at our local level, we don't need OPSU Central to approve those. So it's a lot of logistics, and I think this will be much more conducive to our local and the operational needs.
It makes a lot of sense to keep your bylaw as your kind of governance document and then have operational policies that will be kind of the things that will change.
And I think that the transparency of what we do is always at the forefront of our mind. So we want to be able to have it in documents and the policies very clearly laid out for members to be able to read. And when we update things, we want to update it and have it available. But with the process with OPSU Central, an update to our bylaws can take quite a bit of time because there's a lot of hoops that they have to jump through. So if our local needs a change with the merger and things like that, we can do that much more efficiently if it's in our policy and procedure. The idea that we are composite had to be incorporated because the part-time sessional people, so someone who works from 0 to 6 hours or above 12 hours on a contract, they're bargaining right now. There's been quite a bit in the news, and they're part of Local 417, but we still will be 2 distinct entities or groups. So we'll have the full-time Local 417, which includes full-time and partial load. And then we'll have the other composite portion, which will be that part-time and sessional. And they're different collective agreements. After the first collective agreement is established with that part-time sessional group, then we can discuss requesting to merge them together. But that's down the line. They have to get a contract first. We've been supporting and representing our part-time and sessional people as best we can, but we should have a designated person. And so the VP2, the second VP position, is something we're looking at incorporating to allow more equal representation, especially once they get a collective agreement. They'll have options of grievances as well as other things that come with a collective.
Excellent. So we'll have 2 VP positions, one dedicated to full-time partial load, one dedicated to part-time sessional, and then we will elect the rest of the executives from the body of stewards that we have. And For either of you, how is this going to help us represent part-time and sessional faculty more effectively?
I think it'll recognize their unique needs. You'll have somebody who is dedicated. You'll have language in our policies and bylaws and procedures that recognize the unique needs of part-time and sessional faculty, but then also, a person whose job it is to understand their unique needs.
And we've got elections this year that are happening. So, Christina, you spoke a little bit about that earlier. Sheila Sachs coming in from OPSU CEFPO to oversee those. Do you want to talk a little bit about what roles are up for election?
Well, everything needs to be voted in, right? So our terms are coming to an end. So president, vice president, treasurer, lead steward or unit steward, secretary or administrative lead, and stewards. So everything needs to be officially voted in. And because Sheila is from outside of our unit, then there's no conflict of interest in her running the elections.
So, anybody who is a member in good standing
Yeah,
can run, can
absolutely.
stand for election. We're looking for bodies.
Always, always.
And we're also looking for people who don't necessarily want to say, I want to be fully committed to being a steward, but I will help out in another way. And
Totally. Yeah. And we've had amazing support from members who aren't able to commit to being a steward, or just being that visible and vocal does not appeal to them. And they know who they are. They are the people who, I think back to the work to rule back in 2022. An enormous number of people volunteered and stepped forward to do a lot of work. There's all kinds of work that needs to be done all the time, and you don't need to be an official steward to contribute.
do you need to know the collective agreement inside and out?
Nope, I don't. And I'm your president.
And these are 3-year terms that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, correct.
And what do you say to somebody who's on the fence about stepping forward?
I believe that everybody has something that they can offer. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of commitment and time, but if you would like to participate, reach out to one of the stewards, reach out to me, reach out to anyone on the executive. Everyone would be more than willing to mentor a new person. We were all new at one time, and we all started and we asked lots of questions.
What do you love about what you do?
I love the people. I always want to stand up for people when they're not really sure if they have a voice. I was very blessed to have people in the local that stood up for me over the years when I've had my own difficulties standing up for myself and saying, hey, this isn't cool. And I think that the support I received has shaped who I am. And I want to give back.
And why is broad representation across campuses or classifications and departments so important?
I think Tabatha said it, right? She said it earlier, talking about representing part-time and sessional members who haven't had representation before. Unless you live it, you don't really understand the realities of what people face. And I think that when people across all the campuses, across all the different departments, across all the different classifications, counselors, professors of various full-time, partial load, sessional, part-time, I think that people should look at their representation on the executive and amongst the stewards, and they should see themselves. They should see that there are people there who will understand what they're going through or what their perspectives are.
And now it's time for another edition of Member Spotlight.
We've talked about the challenges. We've talked about the change. We've talked about the need for people to step forward. Now let's talk about the tools that make stepping forward possible. Because the truth is, you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to memorize the collective agreement. You don't need to have all the answers. What you do need is support, and we have that. One of the most innovative things happening in our local right now is a system built by Steward John Holmes. It's called the Virtual Steward, and it's already helping us catch deadlines, organize cases, protect privacy, and think more strategically about the issues that our members face. This is the future of union work, and it's happening right here in Local 417. Here's John.
So there are things that you can build called custom GPTs or Gemini gems, and it just basically allows you to train an AI on certain documents. So when I was hired here, my first thing I did was I uploaded our collective agreement into a custom GPT so that I could have my own ability to ask questions about what our collective agreement told us. And so that's helped me just kind of within my office to be able to become the expert and help to recommend to colleagues when they had questions about things. I would just open that up and answer questions. So then when I joined as a steward, I thought maybe we could have something like that, that instead of just making it available for me, I can make it available to everyone. So I kind of adjusted it so that it was a little bit more robust. And I presented it to the LEC at a meeting, and people were blown away. And I was kind of surprised. Like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's very simple to do, but there was interest in the idea and in expanding the idea.
Yeah, well, we were tired of getting the paper cuts from flipping pages.
Going through to the collective agreement. So one of the concerns with using a custom gem or a GPT is that if a person doesn't know what they're doing as they interact with it, they're actually helping publicly train the models. So my settings don't allow that to happen. But if I publish that GPT and allow others to use it, if they don't understand how to adjust those settings, then they may unknowingly be giving information to these large corporations to train their models, which helps them learn about you. And that's not what we want for our members. So it was at that time I thought we needed to take a step back. I asked what sort of interest there was within the LEC, and there was strong interest that this was a good idea. And so I took a step back to try to develop a system that anyone would be able to work with, but that there would be zero possibility of privacy implications, of privacy breaches, so that the models couldn't learn from information that it was being asked about. So that was sort of the process. And as we've used the system, it's evolved beyond just answering questions about the collective agreement into a much more robust application.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And the early reactions you mentioned, the LEC, many of us in the LEC were excited to see it. And I know you've talked with other people at colleges across the province as well.
When I decided that it was time to build the tool, I realized that the problem that I was facing was a problem that everyone in our LEC was facing, and it was a problem probably that other locals were also facing. So I took the time to think how this could properly scale to work for any local. So I've tried to demonstrate its use to other locals. There's skepticism that's out there. I think people need to be engrossed in the system to kind of really realize its value. So there's interest, there's excitement, and then there's hesitation. And at the moment, there hasn't been a lot of buy-in. I think it's going to change. I hope it's going to change because I fear that our locals are going to be left behind, because I think the employers have robust HR systems with deep pockets and more than likely have AI integrated systems in the back end. And I fear that if we don't respond in kind, that workers are going to lose out.
Yeah, and we really still are working out of filing cabinets, and we're doing it electronically, but still a very manual process that we had undertaken. So for somebody that's never seen it, what's the virtual steward kind of in plain language?
I think you could think of it almost like a technical help desk. So, well, there's two aspects. There's a public facing option, and then there's the back end that the stewards use. So public facing, it's just essentially a chatbot that you can ask questions about your collective agreement. That's very much, I don't know what the right approach is for that. There's a couple of different options that you can change the way it kind of handles the questions that you ask it. I don't know what the correct method is. It feels a little bit robotic-y to me to answer Steward's questions, but the reason for that is that I was really afraid that it would give wrong answers. I really tried to build it to avoid hallucinations. Um, Something I like about it is that when it does provide information, it needs to specify what article within the collective agreement it's referencing, and then it hyperlinks it to the document, so you can go and read it for yourself to see what it says. And that I've put in stronger guardrails for the public facing portal because a great fear is that we give the wrong advice to a member who just accepts that blindly, because hallucinations are absolutely a reality, and that's something that we need to try to address. That's the public facing. Then the back end is basically if a member has a question, we used to have a form that they would fill out and it would go into an Excel spreadsheet, and then that would be forwarded to a steward. So what I did is that same form exists, but when it gets submitted to our system. So the first thing that happens is that the AI analyzes the information and it tries to set a priority to be low, medium, high, or potentially grievable. If something is grievable, there's a timeline that's in place. So we need to identify those grievable possibilities right away so that we make sure that we're able to meet our timelines. It gets logged into a system, and then we have a triage steward that goes through, sees what the request is, and then they assign that request to a steward.
So this is really helping avoid things slipping through the cracks. When there's something that's potentially grievable, we have timelines that are very, very set in stone.
And the reason that this happened is because we were at OPSU convention. The Fleming College merger with St. Lawrence was announced. And so I had the opportunity, I was talking with Fleming about their processes, and they were telling me about a grievance that they lost because they'd missed the deadline. And that was something I hadn't really occurred to me. And so that at convention, I started trying to build this system that would prevent this from happening to us. And so I started looking at our current system, and that's kind of what prompted the idea. So yeah, it's very important. But then what that allows it, the triage steward is then able to assign it to another steward, and then that steward gets a working area to work on the case. And what's nice about it is that they can upload any sort of documents that they need. So that sometimes there's your CVs are required, or sometimes there's different rules and regulations if someone's been accused of a breach. All that information can be uploaded, and the entire case is siloed. It's one individual case. No other steward has access to it. So even though the triage steward was able to see the initial bit of information, they then assign it to a steward, and it's only that steward that has access, because we need to ensure privacy of members. And then they get to work with that case. So as soon as the steward opens their workspace, it says, this was the initial information. This is the synopsis of what the AI thinks is going on, and these are some recommendations. What do you want to do? And it's up to the steward to figure out what are the next steps. But it's very nice to have this assist. I call it a virtual steward, or I call it the virtual assistant, as AI assistant. It's there to help stewards do their job, essentially.
I find that it's been really helpful. And you mentioned pointing out specific places within the collective agreement that things are coming up. You can go back directly and look at that. One of the things that it really does is bring up questions that you may not have thought about. And again, that's the benefit of AI when we're using it effectively, and what we teach our students in many situations. So how do you use it for critical thinking? And it enables stewards to kind of grow their thinking as well, to make sure that we are presenting our members with the absolute best service that we can. Um, and then if things go to a grievance, it's very helpful as well. Do you want to talk about kind of that next step?
Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully the goal is to resolve a situation without going to a grievance. So we can craft emails that we send to management, replies that come in, we include that inside of the case file. So we're trying to put as much information about the entire case into one location as possible. Sometimes we've gotten a little snippet. We then ask the member, can you forward all emails that you've had? All those emails we can add to the system so that an entire case, it's all contained in one location. And then if it results in the fact that we need to generate a grievance, we just have a little button that says branch to grievance, and it moves into the grievance phase. And I mean, a bit of a funny story. I built this because I was working the system, and I'd identified a grievance, and then it looked like I needed to file a grievance. I was a new steward. I didn't know what that process was. And so I tried to build this tool that would allow me to create this grievance. And then it was after I'd done all this that I discovered, there's actually a formal OPSU grievance form that we're supposed to use. And so I had no idea. I was just trying to do what the best I could. But what's nice about it is that I think is pretty slick is that the it generates a summary of the case, which was what I thought was sort of be my grievance, which we can go in and we can edit. And then it generates what it thinks should be the pre-filled sections of the OPSU grievance form. It ensures it fits into the correct size box and the information's there. And then you can go in and adjust as you see fit because it's your grievance. You work with the member to say, this is exactly what we want to state. And this is what the recommendation is based on the facts that it has. But ultimately, we need to decide what those final boxes say. And then we say generate grievance, and it downloads the OPSU form. It's pre-filled with all of the members' information, all of the details that were there, and our grievance is ready to go.
And I know, John, it's something that is helping us with our workflow. Obviously, we're stewards kind of on the side of our desk, and we don't have a lot of time, a lot of extra time. So it does help expedite, and it helps us think through things. We've got disclaimers to make sure you're going back and checking, and obviously, all stewards are trained in that. But it also gives a secure place for people's information, as opposed to kind of sitting in the email of a steward.
Sure. Yeah. There's many different locals have used personal emails. We don't. We pay for Microsoft Office accounts. So I think we as a local that we're secure in that regard, but a lot of locals don't have that as security. But I mean, a big concern is what happens when stewards leave. There's a lot of information that gets lost. Fleming was decimated with huge numbers of cuts, and they lost half their union. When they leave, their knowledge leaves with them. And so if we can kind of track all of our information in one location, it's not dependent on one individual. That collective knowledge stays there. And the other nice thing is that we even have the ability to share a case. So I'm working on a particularly complex case right now. It was assigned to another steward, but then I've been asked to assist in the investigation. And so the person is able to add a collaborator into that space. So now I have access to those files as well. And I can come up to speed quickly, and I can provide the assistance as required.
So there can be a handoff as
Exactly.
needed as well. Good. And in terms of being able to look at kind of the body of things that are happening. So typically, we know what members we've talked to, and we see what those issues are that we're talking about individually, and sometimes we come together and we're able to identify trends. How is the virtual steward helping with that?
So I would say at the moment it's not helping as well as it could. I think that's a planned ability. The information is there, so it will allow us to be able to identify trends. There's big plans for the data that's going to be contained within there. If we think about grievances, one of the things I was just at the DivX, which stands for Divisional Executive. I was there last weekend, and we learned about cases that were being lost at the grievance phase, and a lot of them are from technicalities. Those are, in today's day and age, there's no reason why technicalities should exist. We should have systems in place that can avoid those from happening. But I've learned in the process that when we generate a grievance, there are many stages before it's actually ever heard by an arbitrator. Many times at which it's closed in advance before it reaches arbitration. But when it's closed, that information is just simply lost. We don't have a history of all of these cases that were resolved or closed, whatever resolved means. All of that information is lost. If we are able to identify cases that get resolved before arbitration, maybe we can identify trends of what we're doing right to successfully resolve these things. Or conversely, what we're doing wrong because we're losing certain cases. The information is there in that data, and we just need to start ensuring that we properly collect the data so that we can then analyze it. There's a lot of potential there to improve what we do to support our members, I think.
Okay, good. And I know one of the things that you've linked in already is the body of jurisprudence, so that previous cases and things that have gone on before were able to see?
I think Gillian a number of years ago recognized that we have cases dating back to the 70s, I think, like, or certainly to the 2000s. We have more than 20 years of case law of arbitrations that have taken place. It's about 400 arbitrated decisions for both Cat A and Cat B. And many of these things are PDF documents, poor quality photocopies. I was able to basically run character recognition on these agreements, vectorize the information so that it's accessible in an algorithmic search essentially, and it allows us now to. Previously, we would have to search by Article 21, maybe know the member's name. There were 5 or 6 fields that we could search on an arbitration for. So if you happen to have the collective knowledge and you remembered that there was a grievance 12 years ago on this particular thing, you might be able to find this arbitrated decision. But it was Christina was asking me about a situation, trying to find an arbitration from there, and I realized it's not searchable. We can't find that information. So that's when I realized we need to be able to properly do a proper search, not just on a few key fields, but on the body of the case. I should be able to say, give me the arbitration when someone was accused of plagiarism. I should just be able to do that and the information come up, or that there was a safety infraction in the electrical lab. The context, allow us to search by context would be important. So we've built that in. We have this collective case knowledge base, and I've done a little bit of work, which would basically, if we submit a grievance, it analyzes what cases have taken place in the past, and from those we can say, well, we've won 60% of those grievances, so maybe this has about a 60% chance. There's more work to be done there to really think about the logic about why cases were won or lost, how those cases really reflect what's going on in this particular case, to probably give us better insight into what's going on there. It's a longer term project, but it's one that absolutely has merit and has the ability to improve what we're doing.
John, when have you had time to do all this work?
It's been very busy. It's a little bit crazy because of how excited I am by it. So you delve into a passion project, and as you're doing the work, you see more potential, and it just drives you to do more. So it's been a lot of long nights, a lot of long weekends, but it was actually you, but asked me a couple of weeks ago, do you ever not work? And I was like, actually, I'm never working. I'm just playing. I love what I do, so that's fantastic, and I love this. I love that I have a meaningful project. I've been involved in coding since 1979. My dad brought home a TRS-80 computer, and I was hooked from then on. And having a true project uh, that I can work on, it's intellectually stimulating, and it's also very rewarding because I really believe in what this will do for us to improve our local and improve members across the province, really.
Yeah. And it already has made a huge difference. I know, with some of the grievances that are going forward related to the layoffs, it's been very helpful there. I just had a case that I've been working on that it was phenomenal in getting me to think differently about it and, to enable us to, I think, provide, fantastic service to somebody who, would have gotten decent service before, but without the technicalities and kind of those things being identified, we wouldn't have known. So I think it's really, really helpful. Is there any feedback that you've gotten on the tool that's kind of helped you the most with reshaping it? What kind of feedback do you get?
People want more. The more you use it, you realize, oh, couldn't you do this? Or this is very much a tool in production. And so I'm actively looking for that sort of feedback. So
Yeah.
Trish contacted me while we were at DivX and just kind of mentioned that it really wasn't working well on her phone. And I was like, what? You're using your phone? Like, you see, I'm always on my laptop, right? People send me texts. It's like that. It's not a good way to get a hold of me because I don't really use my phone. But of course, I mean, most people use their phone. And I had not at all considered the implications of what that would look like on the phone. So last weekend, that was my project. Is I created everything so it was mobile friendly, essentially.
Wow.
Not everything, but I figure if you're getting to the grievance stage, that aspect we could do that on a laptop. But basically all the other tools, we can now work on the phone. But as people use it, they come up with suggestions, and those are great suggestions. I keep coming up with suggestions because as I use things, I realize, oh, this would be good. So currently, I've got a list of items that are to dos, and what happens is as other items come in, they jump to the top. So um, right now, we have to copy and paste someone's email address from the workspace into an email. That's crazy. Why wouldn't I just be able to one click and it would copy? Or maybe we should be able to email directly from the workspace itself. But those things have fallen down because I was working on mobile first. So as people use it and they have suggestions, then they need to bring them forward to let me know, because I just use it in one way and we want it to be able to work for everyone. And there's that in today's day and age, essentially, if you think, shouldn't this tool be able to do this? Shouldn't we be able to do this? Wouldn't it be good if it could do that? It probably can. You just need to come forward and make that suggestion. And then there's got to be a proper plan in place to think about what the implications are. But there's a way to make it happen.
Love that. I absolutely love that. And I just want to come back to, because it's one of the things that we're always focused on, safety and confidentiality. We may have members who are wondering, is my data safe? Is my information safe? So again, can you just reiterate how the tool really protects member information?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my number one priority, right? So um, so first of all, the data is only ever resides in Canada. It never leaves Canada. Resides on a server in Montreal. Everything within the database has got row level security, so everything is encrypted end to end as it leaves the platform that you're using. As it arrives to the server in Montreal, that information is encrypted, and then at the in the database itself, it's encrypted there as well. Everything's password protected, so we need to rely on our stewards to ensure that they are using proper security protocols. But those sorts of things, the passwords, those are all encrypted within the database. I could not tell you anyone's password if I wanted to. It's simply not possible. So we've got a secure system that resides only in Canada, and we've got the ability to ensure that if a member, if another steward is laid off and is removed from the union, we've got the ability to continue that service if necessary.
All right. And I know we had a group lottery ticket the other day, and it didn't win. But if something happens to you, John, what happens with the virtual steward?
So that's I'm trying to build it precisely so that it will continue to work without me. So the goal is that with or without me, it will continue. The virtual steward itself is an incorporated business. So whether I'm working with the union or not, I plan to be able to continue to run that to allow other locals to be able to use it. The cost is I'm basically just charging basic compute costs so that they got to pay for the infrastructure. Uh, so it's a $50 a month, which is I think pretty darn good deal, because one of the other things we've offered is it's actually its own AI chatbot. So we absolutely do not want any steward putting up personal information into any public chatbot.
Yeah.
So this allows any steward to be able to when they're logged in, to use just generative AI for anything. If they want to put in some information about help me make my lesson plan, it would do that. But we also have the ability to toggle and say only look for based on our union documents, so that capability exists. But by harnessing the API keys, we can actually the per compute cost is quite low. And so that's why we can actually provide AI for all stewards and this entire system for only $50 a month. So that will continue whether I am sadly laid off. But when I win the lottery, it will continue.
Yeah, and that speaks to the precarity of our work, doesn't it? When you've got somebody with the incredible talent and brilliance that you have, and yet we all have to think about, well, if I'm not here, then how does it carry forward? So we are benefiting greatly from you, John, and I hope that continues long, long into the future.
Moving forward, like this is a new tool, right? I would say we've officially started using it as a collective, as our local beginning of April. So we we need to think about what data retention policies would look like. So we're not there yet, but we might want to say, well, we think we should only keep data for a year or not. Those are decisions that locals need to make. One of the things we don't want to lose is the collective knowledge. So what we can do is we could, if we decide, we can say, well, after a certain length of time, what we want to do is remove the personal identifiable information, anonymize the data, but keep the case history. A member submitted a grievance because they were being improperly paid. Keep those details without the identifying information. So those are tools that we can build, and it's going to be up to us to decide what those requirements are. I think we're also going to just want to work with OPSU as well. We want to make sure that we're following not only like the letter of the law, but that we're doing the right thing. And I don't know exactly what those answers are, but as we continue to use this tool, those are questions we need to address, come up with answers.
All right. And do you find that people have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to using AI like this?
I think there's a lot of concern in general. Definitely, there's this idea of privacy and corporations learning about us, which is absolutely true if you are using a public AI.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important that we have secure systems that prevent that from happening. So we can absolutely guarantee that there's no privacy implications. So people need to recognize that we have the ability to use AI without publicly training the models. So I think that's probably one misconception. The other thing sometimes people get a little bit confused at is if they put up personal information, does that mean next week when someone else is going to be asking information that they're going to learn from it? No, they won't, because the AI models only train themselves every once in a while. But it does mean 6 months from now, when they come out with the newest trained model, the information that you put in there will now be known by that AI, and you cannot unknow it. Julie, I'm going to ask you to forget that my name is John. Could you please forget that for me? If you know some information, you can't unknow that information. When a model has been trained, you cannot simply go in and say, no longer know this. The way it's done, it cannot be unknown. So there's a case where Samsung put in proprietary information. Someone at Samsung did this. You cannot remove that from the model. That is now part of the system. Now, the AI engineers may try to put guardrails in to ensure that it doesn't publicly disclose that information, but ultimately it knows that information, and that will have repercussions. So it's important that we do maintain enterprise-grade security around that privacy.
Excellent. Okay. And one of the things that I know OPSU talks about is AI not replacing the work of individuals or the work of people.
Well, sure. I mean, I guess the question is, do you feel like there's now less work? Do you feel like we need fewer hours, fewer stewards? I just don't see that happening at all. I'm shocked at the cases I'm learning about of people that are being paid inaccurately. And I don't think that the cases that I've learned about are the only cases. So I think that we have the ability to use these tools to potentially discover a lot more infractions of our collective agreement, which is going to generate more work, require more stewards, more steward hours. I'm not looking to create more steward hours. What I'm trying to do is I think what this, in fact, at one of the OPSU things I was listening to is that people were talking about we need more workers. We don't have enough hours in our day to get done what we need to do. It's like, I know we do not. So what we need to be able to do is to reduce the number of hours that are required so that we can continue to function with the jobs that we have. What we want to be able to do is to do our jobs more efficiently. And I don't see, unfortunately, I mean, like, I don't see this as just solving our problems. I think it's going to help us identify our problems and be able to address those problems more efficiently so that we can actually do a better job with our stewards.
Yeah. I love that it makes me smarter.
Well, I teach computers, right? The question is, do I recommend people go into computing right now? Should they go into software engineering or computer hardware? I think that there's going to be a greater demand. There's going to be more and more applications that need to be built. So this is a customized application that I couldn't have built at the speed that I'm building at without the use of AI. And I'm doing it because I have access to AI. And I think that we're going to get more and more software created. We're going to want more and more people working with AI to help us do our jobs better. I don't see the loss of jobs. I think there may be displacements, there'll be movements, but I'm personally an optimist in that regard. I'm not worried about it.
Awesome. Well, we are certainly thrilled to have you as a steward with the local. I know you haven't been with us very long, but my goodness, the impact that you have made, John, has just been incredible.
Thank you very much. I think you had started earlier on asking about. We're always looking for stewards, right?
Yes.
We're looking for people to be able to help. And I built this tool because I felt like I didn't know anything. I felt like I was coming in. I wanted to help. I wanted to support members, and so I was offered to help a member in an investigation, and I felt when I started the process, I was worried because this person's job was on the line. And just because we believed that the college was following through, but that they had a favorable impression, just because we believed that was the case, that might not be the case when it actually happened. And it was with a member that had credentials that could have also have been removed, not just teaching credentials, but outside credentials. And so there was a bunch of documentation from these outside agencies. And that's when I became very nervous. And that was when I created my investigation helper to help me through that process. And it went very, very well. I'm very pleased to see. And I worked with the member, sharing my screen, showing the interaction I was having with the virtual steward. And the feedback I got from that person was that they felt very well represented. So if I could do that, someone else can come in and do it as well. So even if you don't have a lot of experience, if you have a desire to help, then there's a spot for you in the union. And it's very rewarding work. And so I would encourage you to ask, come out and get involved.
When the academic layoffs hit, they didn't just land on faculty. They sent aftershocks through every hallway, every office, every team. Support staff felt it, not just because they work alongside the people who were impacted, but because many of them lived through their own layoffs just a year ago. Old wounds reopened, new anxiety surfaced, and the merger, still unresolved, still looming. Local 418's been navigating all of it at once. And in this episode, I talk with Local 418 President Amanda Shaw about what St. Lawrence's support staff are facing right now, the ongoing bumps, the people quietly falling off recall lists, the uncertainty around the merger, and the practical steps staff can take to protect themselves, including the push to update PDFs and build shared training with Fleming. This is the story behind the story, the one happening in the offices, labs, and service areas across the college. Welcome, Amanda. I know our attention's been turned to academic layoffs, and that's been the absolute focus.
I think that the faculty layoffs have also maybe opened some wounds for people who were impacted before and even people who weren't impacted before, because obviously there was a large number of faculty who were impacted, and we work with them and have worked with some of the people who were impacted for years. And like our hearts are breaking for everybody. So it's, I think, thrown an additional stressor on an already stressful time for people.
Mm-hmm. And your bumping still kind of is like there's still ripples through the organization.
Absolutely. There are still ripples, and it is just people who are coming back from protected leaves and things. But the thing that we're also kind of struggling with is we're seeing people drop off our recall lists now because it's been more than a year since the bulk of the layoffs, right?
Did you see much recall happen?
What we actually entered into a local agreement with management for full time, where they were able to recall people at least into Appendix D positions. So it gave people some income while they were still on the recall list versus just kind of sitting at home. And we did see some of that. Off the top of my head, I know of at least one person, two people, I think, who got recalled into permanent positions. So we did see some for sure. It wasn't as successful, I would say, with our part-time as with our full-time.
And what are you focusing on right now?
Right now, because the members are obviously nervous about the merger, we're trying to shift their focus to their PDFs. So that's the kind of big thing that we're working on now. So we've scheduled a bunch of lunch and learns with Fleming in coordination or conjunction with representatives from Fleming College. We are holding joint lunch and learns for PDF position description form training. We've got another one another two actually on May 21st and two on May 29th to get people to start thinking about their PDF, because we don't know where the merger is going to go. And just like in a layoff process, you want to make sure that your position description form is as accurate as possible so that the Employment Stability Committee knows exactly what you're doing and what those skill sets are, right? So we're trying to shift people's focus, because we've also been getting a lot of questions about position description forms, PDFs, and how accurate or inaccurate they might be. So we're trying to give people the resources they need to start navigating those conversations and or filing classification grievances to make sure that they do have the most accurate PDF possible, and to make sure that their job is accurately rated as well with an accurate pay band.
Are there a lot of discrepancies that you're finding?
Well, the feedback that we get mostly is from the members, right? But it doesn't take a local president to know that there are going to be positions at different colleges that are similar, but may not be rated the same, because as I'm sure you guys have also seen, the colleges may have the same frameworks and operating guiding principles like the collective agreements or the legislation, but they all operate very, very differently. There's enough leeway within what they're allowed to do to create some major differences between how different colleges operate. So we just want to make sure that we're preparing staff, because other than that, there isn't really much we can do. So we're waiting for more direction from OPSU about whether or not there are going to be additional rallies. And we're talking to the divisional executive to see what the next steps are as well there. But in the meantime, we want people to put the work in now and make sure their PDFs are accurate, so that if something does happen and this merger goes forward and there are impacts, that we're not scrambling trying to figure out the documentation then. It's really important, actually. And the other piece too is we've suggested to staff that they submit general skills resumes to HR, because we had a lot of people impacted who bumped into new roles and now would have additional skills through these new roles that really should be captured on a resume, so that if it ever did come down to another Employment Stability Committee process, that again, the committee has an updated document outlining the employee's skills, which is another important document piece. So we're right now just trying to focus on that and keeping that stuff moving forward, just to give people something to do. But I'm really excited because Marcia Steves, who's the president of Local 351 at Fleming, she and I are talking about doing a joint GMM for all of our members, and we're doing these joint lunch and learns and just trying to build those relationships. And both colleges need the same information and need to kind of be doing the same thing now anyways. So rather than two groups doing them differently, we are kind of doing it together, which I think is fantastic. We also have a divisional meeting at the end of the month, the weekend of the 30th. So we'll also be talking to people at other colleges about what they're seeing and hearing and what's going on, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss that. So I'm looking forward to that too.
All right. And your members get information about those workshops in their email? You send things out directly?
Yeah, we do some Facebook blasts, and we also send it to their personal email addresses as well.
And what else is happening for the summer?
I'm hoping that some people will actually manage to take some vacation time and rest, because
It's been a
while
long year.
it has been a long year. And one of the things that I had put out to the membership last week, I think, was the importance of using benefits like paramedical and your vacation days, because in our last round of bargaining, the employer made it abundantly clear that they're coming after our benefits in the next round. And for us to show that we need them, we have to use them. And if going into the next round of bargaining, there's all this data saying that only a fraction of the people are using their paramedical benefits, or only a fraction of the people are using the vacation days the way that they're intended to, they're at risk. And we need members to be getting those massages and using physiotherapy, and with all the stress going on, talking to someone is not a bad thing either. So counseling and therapy and other self-care measures that are covered under the collective agreement are going to be really important.
And they're not things that the employer can look at and say, hey, you're a bad employee because you're using your benefits.
Exactly. And the employer, with all of our health and wellness policies and initiatives, would want people to get help and do those things to help with their self-care, just so, because, you know, people are more productive that way when they're feeling healthy and managing that stress. We're hoping some more joint meetings with Fleming throughout the summer, and getting those PDFs updated, and anything else that kind of comes up on the plate. And we're hoping to find out what's happening with the merger, because obviously there really hasn't been any conversation one way or the other. I did let the membership know that we had filed a grievance about the merger. So we've had that preliminary grievance meeting, but we're still awaiting a response.
We'll wait with bated breath to see what comes out of the college on that.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't anticipate we're going to have another town hall session or anything until probably the fall. So we may be in a bit of a wait and hold time right now.
And unless something major changes with the merger and kind of where they're at in the plans or the execution of it, I'm with you. I don't know that we'll hear anything till the fall.
It sounds like, though, support staff are well positioned for if and when anything does happen, in that you are getting those PDFs together and using a lot of common languages. Has there been a lot of differences between Fleming and St. Lawrence?
So we haven't looked formally. If it did come down to merging, we don't know what the impacts to staff are going to look like. We don't know what their plans are. We haven't seen a framework. Glenn, in the last town hall, I think he said we were going to need more staff, not less staff, because this merger was supposed to be an opportunity for the college to grow, not to shrink. So with all of those pieces, looking at a seniority list right now isn't much help. And the way that the PDF system is made, while yes, there are going to be jobs with similar titles, but the PDF system doesn't rate them in classification families like it used to. It's tailored to the specific job. So when I started working at Cambrian College in Sudbury in 2000, the jobs were grouped into what was called classification families. So you'd have like a clerk general B, a clerk general C, and they decided that the work being done by those people fit into those classification families. But then they were acknowledging that not all clerk general Bs were doing exactly the same thing. There were nuances. So the new PDF system that was put into place to replace those classification families is to include those nuances and be able to tailor the PDF and the rating to the specific job and specifically what they're doing. So even looking at the seniority list to go, oh, these people are at this pay band, while it's a good, unless you have both documents in front of you and can compare specifically, it doesn't necessarily mean that both jobs are identical, which is where those nuances come into play. So I'm hoping that with the PDF reviews that the staff are doing, that they will be able to make sure that their specific PDF is an accurate reflection of what they do and is accurately rated with the nuances of their own specific jobs in consideration. But we have also raised the concern with our labor relations managers, and I know Fleming has raised the concern there as well, about how the college intends to handle those things when determining staffing and when the two colleges merge, because you're not going to want to have two people with a pretty similar job title doing completely different work. But again, premature conversations, and I think setting a year as the end date for when the merger was going to take place is a pretty lofty goal, considering how much work there is just when you consider there's more than 400 support staff just at a full-time level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be one of those things that we're going to figure out with time, I think, and the process will be what it is, and it will hopefully clarify as time goes on, and will be part of those discussions and sitting at the tables to be able to help guide those discussions.
That's what we're hoping for. We're hoping for meaningful, collaborative discussions about what's going forward.
So that's in our collective agreement.
It is. It's definitely built in very clearly in employment stability committee language. And also, I feel like in the spirit of different articles within the collective agreement as well. Employment stability committee ours has started meeting monthly after UCC. And that way we can talk about anything that's kind of come up. And once we can get through these destabilizing periods, the hope is that that's where we're going to be able to talk about training that might be needed for people, even people who might be in lower pay bands, and looking at those pieces to see if there's additional training or experience or job shadowing and different strategies to make it easier for people to move up into other roles.
Nice. And as we're trying to bring innovation into our workforce, great place for those discussions.
Absolutely. And my hope is a more proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. One of the concerning things that I've kind of been hearing rumblings about is the use of consultants. So I'm trying to get some more information on that and how that's impacting the workforce. As a final note, if members are hearing rumblings of things that they're not sure of, then they are encouraged to reach out to a steward and just let us know, because it could be something that we are aware of and it might be something we're not aware of. But the more information we have, the better to navigate that. And also just to watch the email and attend the training sessions that we've been arranging with Fleming, and we'll get through this together the same way we got through the layoffs.
The same way we get through every day. All right. That's great. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate you taking time.
You've been listening to Cattails, stories that matter to faculty and beyond. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit slcfaculty.ca and stay connected with us on social media.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or statements of OPSU-SEFPO, St. Lawrence College, or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. While every effort is made to ensure accuracy, SLC Faculty Local 417 makes no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the information shared. Any reliance placed on such information is strictly at the listener's own risk. Music and sound effects used in this podcast are licensed or royalty-free. We respect copyright law and encourage our listeners to do the same.